去年の10月11月のこと。あなたは中核と書かれた白メットをかぶって突然遠藤君が転んだ。あなたはものすごい勢いで私服を突き飛ばすとカメラを取って走り出したわ。
Named the cinema of actuality, the Japanese avant-garde cinema of the late 1960s had a strong affinity with street politics. The movie theater, for example, was often imagined to be an extension of the streets rather than a place where one escaped from reality. These films' proximity to contemporary reality was considered to be dangerous and to hold the potential to disrupt the public order, as if a mere incitement for insurrection on screen would be actualized on the streets. However, by leaving the political agency of the cinema of actuality, the contemporary 1970 World Exhibition in Osaka represented a territorial event that conveyed an enduring sense of magnitude, that folded the immediate present into an archive of history, by rerouting the force of the spectacle from the open space of the streets to the enclosed space of the symbolic edifices. A materialization of the Expo70 that conflated the architecture and its depictions into a substitution of actuality. Yet, the physical disappearance of these edifices ignites a game-like parallel between the virtualization of the urban conditions and the virtualization of cinematic images. That leaves a view of the Expo70 as territorial montage. The spectacles of Expo70 imposed a sense of monumentality by carefully separating the open space of urban streets from the enclosed exhibition site. It operated through a process of spatial monumentalization. The sense of gigantic monumentality generated by Expo70 was predicated on the efficient management of crowds and the constant surveillance of the enclosed exhibition space, presented as a site of the utopian future, but not of the immediate present. The successful display of technologically enhanced spectacles at Expo70 was thus made possible by their confinement to the enclosed and regulated space of exhibition. Expo70 was a laboratory for testing and experimenting with networked systems of governance as much as it was a platform for showcasing artworks based on multiple screen projections. For example, the Mitsui Group Pavilion was equipped with 3 giant screens and 3 rotating mobile platforms that lifted hundreds of spectators at once. Its main attraction, Space Review, relied on 18 film projectors, 9 slide projectors, 3 strobe light projectors, and 1,726 speakers. It was called a work of total theater, emphasizing the immersive effects of the circular screens and sonic environment. In spite of the leveling and liberating effects intended by architects and filmmakers, most visitors moved through these pavilions in a programmed manner under the vigilant gaze of security guards. In a variation on the combination of utopian vision and Cold War paranoia, the vision of Expo70 was held in tension with the emergent paradigm of urban governance aided by technologically mediated surveillance. Pitched as the Festival of Environmental Art, Expo70 paraded a number of spectacular media projects that emphasized enclosure. The withering of actuality in these mediatized spectacles corresponds to the concurrent shift in the cinema of actuality and to the double disappearance of political and artistic activities from urban space. What is at stake is a world in the re-inscription of a cartography that must present itself as impeccable through controlled technical cybernetics and systems theory that had enabled architects to design the city based on relational elements. A cybernetic environment of the future that must meet the following conditions. 1. The environment will have a protective membrane that maintains an equilibrium within it. 2. Any space will be interchangeable with any other space. 3. It will be equipped with various movable mechanical devices. 4. It will allow for a human-machine interface. And 5. It will possess a feedback circuit that supports self-learning. The introduction of computers also marked a shift away from the industrial coordination model of urban planning to the new simulation model of urban design appropriate for a post-industrial society. Simulation-based operations and networked control rooms thus became the model of urban design. If we then understand the Expo70, not just as a model of urban design, but as a model territory, where territory is information in constant flux, where the ground is no longer fixed, but fluid, where navigation is a methodology for sense-making in a space of constant dynamism, and not plotting lines from understood origins to logical solutions, the Expo70 becomes environmental art. It becomes a map of a computer game. The point is that games are not a consequence of computers making the world unreal. On the contrary, games make computers become real. Games are generative fictions. We live in game space. So, regardless of whether humans ever were rational in the way game theory, cybernetics or systems theory assumed, a lot of people have now been trained to understand rationality in this way and to imitate its effects. Game space becomes more real, because more rationalizable, than the world it was supposed to model. And we are now all inside it, along with everything else. The virtual, as opposed to the actual, as a trans-individual co-presence of times in the now, is what carries and organizes reality. Computers, multiple screens, electronic surveillance, and networked information systems have become so integral to our daily life that we no longer pay close attention to their presence. These media have become environmental, but the processes by which they have become pervasive, ubiquitous, and thus invisible, needs to be historicized. Returning to Expo70 is one way to account for these processes, and to reimagine the moment when simulations of such ubiquity commanded attention and excitement. But where the focus is shifted from technocratic monumentality to the political technique of territory. This shift, further, highlights the game space qualities of the Expo70 by utilizing the more than 40-year-old footage, framed as a first-person shooter moving through the exhibition grounds, that itself operates a codec interference of its multiple digital manipulations. The immersion into the Expo70 as a computer game map is no longer a representation of reality but is rather an engagement of creating reality. This, however, does not render Montage redundant against the immersive game world, because this Montage insists that the mediated environments do not necessarily advance a disappearance of political and artistic activities, but it enables us to create and contest the generative fictions of the territorialized game space we already live. These digital images are already montage. By unpicking the once architectural reality and untold technical legacy of the Expo70 is a territorial montage. The return to an interaction with the narrative of Expo70 is an attempt to materialize the mediated processes. Using the manipulativeness of its digitized images as a re-editing on screen, the Expo70 can represent other complex histories of digital determinacy, utopian visions and contextual rationalizations. Setting into place a cinematic erosion of what carries and organizes reality, to infuse difference, to question what simulations to be actualized.